This story is titled, My Bride Ghosted Me, 2 weeks before our wedding for a secret trip with her old college circle. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here typing out my misery for strangers to read, but life has a way of pulling the rug out from under you when you least expect it. So here I am, trying to make sense of everything. My name's Jake, I'm 27, and up until 2 weeks ago, I thought my life was finally falling into place. I was engaged to Rachel, 26, the woman I had loved for 7 years. 7 whole years, man. That's a quarter of my life. Everything was set. The venue booked, the flowers ordered, the guest list finalized. In my mind, I was days away from stepping into the life I'd always imagined. Rachel and I met back in college. She was a freshman, and I was a sophomore. The first time I saw her, she was sitting on the campus lawn, laughing at something with her friends. She had this kind of glow about her, like the kind of person who could light up an entire room just by existing. I know it sounds corny, but it's true. She was the kind of girl you didn't just meet. You remembered. We started dating after a few so-called study sessions that were more about me making excuses to spend time with her than actual studying. Over the years, we survived the highs and lows together, exam stress, job hunts, that ridiculous phase where I thought growing a beard would make me look more rugged. Spoiler, it didn't. She was my rock, my safe place, the one person I could count on no matter what. When I finally popped the question last year, it wasn't some over-the-top proposal. It was simple, heartfelt, just the way we were. I took her back to the little 24-hour diner where we had our first date, ordered her favorite strawberry milkshake, and slid the ring across the table. She teared up before I could even finish asking. That night, I felt like I had everything I ever wanted. And then, 2 weeks before our wedding, she disappeared. It started small, a change so subtle I almost missed it. Rachel had always been a perfectionist when it came to planning, down to the tiniest detail. She spent weeks making sure every guest had the perfect seat, balancing friend groups, making sure her wild college friends weren't near her conservative aunt. It was just who she was. But then, seemingly out of nowhere, she started checking out. She was spending more nights out, brushing me off with, "You don't mind, do you?" Of course, I said I didn't. I didn't want to seem controlling, but deep down, it stung. I told myself it was just stress. Weddings can be overwhelming, right? Maybe she needed a little space. That night, while finalizing the seating chart, she kept glancing at her phone, smiling at messages before quickly locking the screen when I looked her way. I told myself not to be that guy, the one who gets suspicious over nothing. I trusted her. I was an idiot. The next morning, she was gone. No note, no explanation. I figured she was just out for coffee or running errands, nothing unusual. But by lunchtime, when I still hadn't heard from her, I felt that gut-wrenching unease settle in. I shot her a quick text. "Morning, where'd you head off to?" No response. By 2 p.m., I tried again. "Everything okay? Haven't heard from you all day?" Nothing. I called her, straight to voicemail. Rachel wasn't the type to just vanish. Even when she was swamped with wedding stuff, she'd at least send a quick, busy love you text. I called her mom next, hoping maybe she was with her. Her mom sounded confused. "Rachel, no, sweetheart, I haven't seen her today." And that's when I knew something was wrong. At first, I tried to stay rational. Maybe her phone died. Maybe she got caught up with something and lost track of time. But as the hours passed, that little voice in my head started screaming that something wasn't right. I sat on the couch staring at my phone, willing it to light up with a text from her. Nothing. By 6 p.m., panic started to set in. I called her closest friends. No one had seen her. I even drove by her favorite coffee shop just in case. Nothing. By the time I got back home, I was pacing the living room like a caged animal. My brain was cycling through every worst-case scenario. Had she been in an accident? Did she get cold feet about the wedding? Or was there someone else? I hated myself for even thinking it, but once the idea crept in, I couldn't shake it. Then out of nowhere, my phone buzzed. "Rachel? Hey, sorry, just been really busy. Talk later?" That was it. No explanation, no apology, just casual indifference. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking with frustration. I texted back immediately. "Rachel, where have you been? I've been calling all day. Are you okay?" Minutes passed, then an hour, no response. And in that silence, something in me snapped. I knew in that moment that this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This wasn't stress or wedding jitters. Something was very, very wrong. And I was going to find out exactly what it was. I barely slept that night. My mind was running in circles, trying to make sense of Rachel's disappearance. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain replayed the past few weeks, searching for anything I might have missed. Some sign, some clue. I had to talk to her. The next morning, I called her again. Straight to voicemail. I sent another text. No response. I wasn't about to sit around waiting for answers. By mid-morning, I decided to drive over to her place. Rachel had an apartment she kept as her personal space, even though we spent most nights together at my place. She claimed she needed somewhere quiet to work from home sometimes, and I never questioned it. Now, I was questioning everything. When I got there, I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. I pulled out my phone and called her one more time. Through the door, I heard it. Her phone ringing. My stomach dropped. I knocked again. Rachel, I know you're in there. Silence. I wasn't leaving until I got some answers. After another minute, I heard shuffling, and then, finally, the door cracked open. Rachel stood there, looking different. Her hair was messy, and she was wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie. Nothing like the usual put-together, stylish Rachel I knew. But what really threw me off was her expression. She looked guilty. What the hell, Rachel? I said, pushing the door open wider. Where have you been? She sighed and stepped aside to let me in. Jake, I just needed some space. Space? I repeated, my voice rising. For what? You ghosted me for a whole day. Do you have any idea how worried I was? She avoided my eyes. I'm sorry, I should have texted more. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to stay calm. Rachel, what's going on? Just talk to me. She hesitated. I just needed time to think. About everything. The wedding, us. I took a step back, like I'd been punched in the gut. Are you saying you don't want to get married? No, she said quickly. I do. I don't know, Jake. It's all been so much. I narrowed my eyes. And you needed space by completely ignoring me? That doesn't make any sense, Rachel. She sighed and finally looked up at me. I went on a trip. I blinked. A trip? Yeah, with some of my college friends, just for a couple of days. I felt like the ground beneath me was shifting. You mean to tell me you disappeared without telling me for a little vacation? I didn't think it was a big deal, she snapped. I just needed a break, Jake. Some time to clear my head before the wedding. My jaw clenched. Rachel, do you hear yourself? You took off without a word, ignored my calls, and now you're acting like I'm overreacting? She sighed dramatically. I just didn't want to deal with more stress. I thought you'd understand. Understand what? I shot back. That you can just take off, ignore me, and expect everything to be fine? She crossed her arms, suddenly defensive. I don't know why you're making this such a big deal. It's not like I cheated on you. I froze. Because I hadn't brought up cheating. She did. And the way she said it, like it was the first thing on her mind. Why would you even say that? I asked slowly. Rachel's face paled. What? No, I just meant, I knew you'd think the worst. I stared at her, my stomach twisting. Something was definitely wrong. Rachel, I said, keeping my voice steady. Where exactly did you go and who was with you? She hesitated. Just my friends. Melissa, Katie, Jenna. I folded my arms. And? She chewed her lip. And Josh. My stomach dropped. Josh, her ex-boyfriend from college. I felt my hands clench into fists at my sides. Are you kidding me? It wasn't like that, Jake, she rushed out. It was just a group trip. Nothing happened. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You expect me to believe that? You disappear without a word, go on a secret trip, and your ex just so happens to be there? I didn't tell you because I knew you'd react like this, she snapped. Oh, so this is my fault now? I shot back. You didn't tell me because you knew it was wrong, Rachel. You knew how it would look. She groaned, rubbing her temples. Can we not do this right now? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper in check. You know what, Rachel? No, we are doing this right now. Because I need to know. Do you still want to marry me? She looked at me, eyes wide. Of course I do. I studied her face, trying to believe her. Trying to believe that the woman I loved wasn't lying to me. But something in my gut told me she wasn't telling me the full truth. And I was going to find out exactly what she was hiding. I left Rachel's apartment feeling like someone had kicked me in the chest. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything she had just said. A secret trip with her college friends, including her ex-boyfriend, Josh. And she didn't think it was a big deal? Yeah, no, something wasn't adding up. I got into my car and just sat there for a few minutes, gripping the steering wheel. The part that bothered me the most wasn't even that she went on the trip. It was how she acted when I confronted her. The defensiveness, the guilt in her eyes, the way she immediately mentioned cheating when I hadn't even brought it up. I had two choices. I could either believe her and try to move on like nothing had happened, or I could get to the bottom of this myself. Guess which one I chose? The first person I called was Melissa, one of Rachel's closest college friends. I had met her plenty of times, and while we weren't exactly friends, she had always been nice enough. I figured if anyone was going to be honest with me, it would be her. The phone rang 3 times before she picked up. Hey, Jake, what's up? She answered, sounding a little too cheerful. Hey, Melissa, listen, I just talked to Rachel. She mentioned you guys went on a trip last week. Silence. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. Oh, yeah, we did, she said quickly. It was just a little getaway, super last minute. Where'd you guys go? I asked, keeping my tone casual. Miami. Miami? Rachel told me she'd gone to Denver. I felt my jaw tighten. Huh, that's weird. Rachel said Denver. Another pause. Oh, yeah, we stopped in Denver on the way, Melissa added hastily. We did a little road trip thing. Now I knew she was lying. No way in hell was Rachel doing a road trip days before our wedding. I leaned back in my seat, gripping my phone tighter. And Josh was there too? Melissa hesitated again. Yeah, but it wasn't a big deal, Jake. We're all just friends. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Melissa, be honest with me. Did something happen between Rachel and Josh? The line was dead silent. Then she let out a nervous laugh. Jake, I really think you should talk to Rachel about this. That was all I needed to hear. I hung up without another word. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I drove around for a while, trying to get my thoughts in order. Rachel had lied to me. That much was obvious. But the worst part? The people covering for her weren't even good at it. They were fumbling through excuses, contradicting themselves left and right. It was clear as day. Something had happened on that trip. And I was done playing dumb. I drove back to Rachel's apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. This time, I didn't bother knocking. I used the spare key she had given me months ago. She was sitting on the couch when I walked in, her phone in her hands. When she saw me, her eyes widened. Jake, what are you? I held up a hand, cutting her off. Melissa told me you were in Miami. Rachel froze. Her face went pale. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that's what I thought. Jake, I can explain, she started, her voice shaking. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, this I gotta hear. Because first you ghost me for a whole day, then you casually mention that your ex was on the trip. And now I find out you lied about where you even went? Rachel's hands were trembling. Just tell me the truth, Rachel, I said, my voice quieter now. If you still love me, if you still want to marry me, then tell me the damn truth. She swallowed hard. And then finally, she said it. I slept with Josh. It felt like the whole world tilted. I took a step back, shaking my head. You're joking. She started crying. It wasn't planned. I didn't go there thinking it would happen. It just... Don't. My voice came out sharp. Don't stand there and tell me it just happened. You chose to go. You chose to lie. And you chose to cheat. Rachel buried her face in her hands, sobbing. I was scared, Jake. Everything was moving so fast, and I freaked out. I needed to feel, I don't know, free for a second. I let out a bitter laugh. Free? You wanted to feel free? She lifted her head, eyes red and puffy. I love you, Jake, I do. But I got scared, and I messed up. Please, can we talk about this? Talk about this? There was nothing to talk about. I had spent 7 years loving this woman, planning a future with her, trusting her. And in return, she had spent a weekend in Miami with her ex, lying to my face the whole way through. I took a deep breath, forcing down the lump in my throat. No, Rachel, I said finally. We can't talk about this, because we're done. She let out a choked sob. Jake, please? I turned around and walked out the door. And for the first time in weeks, I felt completely sure about something. Rachel was out of my life. For good. I'd like to say that after I walked out of Rachel's apartment, I never looked back. That I held my head high, moved on with my life, and never wasted another second on her. But that would be a lie. The truth? I felt like my whole world had collapsed. 7 years, down the drain. One minute I was planning a future with her, and the next, I was sitting in my car, staring at the steering wheel, trying not to lose my damn mind. The next few days were a blur. I ignored Rachel's calls and texts, because yeah, she had the nerve to keep reaching out. First, it was the desperate apologies. Then it was the I miss you messages. By day 3, she was begging me to talk to her. I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on canceling the wedding. Calling the venue, the caterers, the florist, each call was like ripping off a fresh bandage, reminding me just how much time, energy, and money I had wasted on someone who didn't deserve me. Then came the worst part, telling everyone. My parents were devastated. My mom, who had always adored Rachel, kept asking if I was sure. Maybe she just made a mistake, honey. Are you sure this is something you can't work through? Mom, she slept with her ex 2 weeks before our wedding, I reminded her. She sighed. I just don't understand why she would throw everything away like that. Yeah, me neither. Telling my friends was easier. Most of them were pissed on my behalf. My best friend Ethan was especially furious. Dude, I never liked her, he admitted after I told him what happened. She always had this fake thing going on, like she was playing the role of the perfect fiancé, but underneath, she was a mess. I wished he'd told me that before I spent 7 years with her. The hardest part? Returning all the wedding gifts. Every time I boxed up another blender, coffee maker, or picture frame with our names engraved on it, it felt like I was shoving my relationship into a trash bag. And maybe that's exactly what I was doing. I managed to go 4 days without seeing Rachel in person. On the 5th day, she showed up at my place. It was 9 p.m. I had just settled onto my couch with a beer, trying to numb my brain with some mindless TV, when I heard the knock. I knew it was her before I even opened the door. She looked like hell. Her eyes were red and puffy. Her hair was a mess. And she was wearing one of my old hoodies. Like that was supposed to make me feel something. Jake, she whispered, voice trembling. I didn't say anything, just stared. I know you don't want to talk to me, she continued, twisting her hands together. But please, just hear me out. I exhaled sharply. Rachel, there's nothing left to say. Please, she begged, just 5 minutes. I should have slammed the door in her face. I should have. But I didn't. I stepped aside, letting her in. She walked in slowly, like she expected me to change my mind and throw her out at any second. I probably should have. Instead, I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. All right, 5 minutes, go. Rachel took a shaky breath. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, and I'm not here to make excuses. I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. I scoffed. That's rich. You sure had a funny way of showing it. She flinched. I was scared, Jake. Everything was happening so fast, and I panicked. Josh was, I don't know, a stupid mistake, a moment of weakness. But it didn't mean anything. I shook my head. Rachel, you don't accidentally end up in bed with your ex. That wasn't a moment of weakness. That was a choice. Tears streamed down her face. I know, and I regret it more than anything. I let out a bitter laugh. You regret it because you got caught. No, she whispered. I regret it because I lost you. Silence. I could feel her eyes on me, pleading, waiting for me to say something. But what was there to say? She had ruined us, and I couldn't fix what she broke. Finally, I spoke. Rachel, I loved you. I would have spent the rest of my life with you, but you threw that away. She let out a choked sob. Jake, please! I shook my head. We're done, Rachel. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. I don't know how to live without you. I sighed. That's not my problem anymore. For the first time in weeks, I felt light. Because I wasn't carrying her mistakes anymore. Rachel wiped at her tears, looking utterly broken. So that's it? 7 years just gone? I clenched my jaw, shoving my hands in my pockets. You made that decision, not me. She sniffled. Can we at least stay friends? I stared at her, completely dumbfounded. Was she serious? Friends? I repeated, letting out a dry, humorless laugh. Rachel, friends don't do what you did. Her face crumpled, and for a split second I felt bad. But then I remembered why we were here in the first place. I walked to the door and held it open. Goodbye, Rachel. She hesitated for a moment, searching my face for something. Anything. But she didn't find what she was looking for. With a defeated sigh, she walked past me, out the door. I shut it behind her. And just like that, she was gone. For the first time since everything had fallen apart, I took a deep breath and let it all go. No more wedding, no more Rachel, no more bullshit. Just me. And that was enough. For the first time in years, I was truly alone. No wedding plans, no fiancé, no more pretending everything was fine. And honestly, at first it felt like freedom. I slept in without worrying about Rachel calling to nag me about last-minute wedding details. I went out with Ethan and my other friends whenever I wanted. I didn't have to check my phone every 5 minutes, afraid of missing a text from her. For the first time in a long time, I could just breathe. But after a few weeks, the high of my newfound freedom wore off. I wasn't happy. I was just numb. I started avoiding places that reminded me of Rachel. I stopped going to our favorite coffee shop, skipped the bars we used to hang out at, and even took a different route to work so I wouldn't pass by her apartment. I told myself I was moving on, but in reality, I was just running away. At work, I buried myself in projects. I picked up extra shifts, volunteered for late-night assignments, and kept my schedule as packed as possible. Anything to keep my mind from drifting back to her. But no matter how hard I tried, the memories still crept in. Like the way she used to steal my hoodies and act like they were hers. Or how she'd randomly text me during the day with some dumb meme just to make me smile. Or how, for 7 years, I had never imagined a future without her. It was stupid. I hated her for what she did, but hate doesn't erase history. And then, just as I thought I was finally starting to put the pieces of my life back together, Melissa texted me. Hey, Jake, I know this is random, but can we talk? There's something you need to know. My stomach twisted. Melissa and I hadn't spoken since everything went down. And honestly, I had no desire to. She had covered for Rachel's lies. What could she possibly have to say now? I should have ignored her, but something about the way she worded it, it felt urgent. I hesitated for a minute before replying. What is it? She didn't text back. Instead, she called me. I stared at my screen, debating whether to answer. My gut told me nothing good was coming from this conversation. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Melissa? She let out a heavy sigh. Jake, listen, I don't even know how to say this, but Rachel's pregnant. The world tilted. I blinked, trying to process her words. What? She found out a few days ago, Melissa continued. She didn't know how to tell you, but she thought you should know. My pulse pounded in my ears. Is it mine? There was a pause, a long, horrible pause. I don't know, Melissa admitted. That's why she's freaking out. It could be yours, or it could be Josh's. I closed my eyes, rubbing my temples. Jesus Christ. I know, Jake, I know. I didn't want you to hear it from someone else. I let out a humorless laugh. Oh, how thoughtful of her. Jake. I hung up before she could say another word. Then I just sat there, staring at my phone, trying to make sense of what the hell I was supposed to do next. A baby. There was a baby in this mess now, and I had no idea if it was mine. I didn't sleep that night. My brain wouldn't shut up. I kept picturing all the different scenarios. Scenario 1, the baby was mine. That meant I was going to be tied to Rachel forever, co-parenting with the woman who betrayed me, dealing with her lies, her manipulations, her presence in my life for the next 18 years. Scenario 2, the baby was Josh's. That meant I dodged a bullet, but I'd have to watch Rachel build a family with the guy she cheated on me with. And even though I knew I shouldn't care, it still made me sick to my stomach. There was only one way to find out. The next morning, I texted Rachel. "We need to talk, in person." She replied immediately. "Jake, I didn't think you'd want to see me." "I don't, but if there's a chance this baby is mine, I need to know." A few seconds later, my phone lit up again. "Okay, can you come over tonight?" I stared at the message for a long time before finally replying. "Yeah." That was it. No heart emojis, no small talk, just cold, hard reality. That night, I drove to Rachel's apartment, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When she opened the door, she looked different. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was in a messy bun. Her eyes were puffy like she had been crying. For a second, just a second, I almost felt bad for her. But then I remembered why I was here. I stepped inside, crossing my arms. "Tell me everything." Rachel nodded, swallowing hard. "I found out 3 days ago. I was late, so I took a test. Then I took another one, and another one." She let out a shaky breath. "All positive." I inhaled slowly, trying to keep my emotions in check. "And you don't know if it's mine?" She shook her head. "It's too early to tell." I clenched my jaw. "Rachel, I need a paternity test as soon as possible." She nodded quickly. "I understand. I'll do whatever you need." I studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. But for once, she actually looked genuine. Tired, sad, maybe even ashamed. But I couldn't trust her anymore. "I'll set up the test," I said firmly. "Until then, don't contact me unless it's about this." Rachel swallowed hard. "Okay." I turned to leave, but before I could walk out the door, she whispered, "Jake, what if it is yours?" I hesitated. Then, without turning around, I said the only thing I knew to be true. "Then I'll do what I have to do." And I walked out, leaving everything behind. The next few days were absolute hell. I went to work, went through the motions, but my mind was elsewhere. No matter how hard I tried to focus, all I could think about was that damn paternity test. Rachel had made an appointment for the soonest possible date. It would take 2 weeks to get the results. 2 weeks of waiting, wondering, and questioning everything about my life. I barely slept. Every night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every possible outcome in my head. What if the baby was mine? Would I be able to co-parent with someone who had betrayed me? Would I have to see Josh at birthday parties, school events, my child's life? Could I ever move past what she had done, knowing our lives would always be connected? And what if the baby wasn't mine? Would that finally give me the closure I needed? Or would it be another knife in my back, knowing Rachel had built a family with the guy she cheated on me with? I was drowning in what-ifs, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. Ethan tried to keep me distracted. He dragged me to bars, made me join a gym with him, even got me back into playing video games. But nothing could take my mind off what was coming. Then finally, the results were in. Rachel texted me. "I got the call. Can you come over?" My stomach twisted into knots. I hadn't seen her since everything went down. This was it. I drove over, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly they hurt. When she opened the door, she looked worse than before. Her skin was pale, her eyes swollen like she hadn't slept in days. For a second, I thought, did she already know? She stepped aside, letting me in without a word. I sat down on the couch, my heart pounding in my ears. "Well?" Rachel took a deep breath. "It's not yours." I exhaled so hard it felt like my lungs had been crushed. I didn't know if I wanted to cry or laugh hysterically. It wasn't mine. I wasn't going to be tied to Rachel forever. I didn't have to deal with years of custody battles, awkward holidays, or watching her and Josh raise a kid together. I was free. Rachel wiped at her eyes. "Jake, I held up a hand. "Don't," she bit her lip. I really thought it was yours." I shook my head. "Rachel, I don't care anymore. It's not mine. That means we have nothing left to say to each other." Her eyes filled with fresh tears. "Can we at least—" "No," I said firmly, standing up. "I spent 7 years loving you, 7 years believing in us, and you threw it all away. Now, I'm done." She let out a quiet sob, covering her mouth. I get it." I nodded. "Good." I turned and walked out that door. And this time, I didn't look back. 1 year later. It's crazy how much life can change in a year. After everything with Rachel, I knew I needed a fresh start. So I moved to a new apartment, changed my routine, and threw myself into work. I traveled more, reconnected with old friends, and for the first time in forever, I focused on myself. Rachel tried to reach out a couple more times, but I ignored every message. She made her choices, and I made mine. And the best part? I met someone new. Her name is Lena, and she's nothing like Rachel. She's kind, funny, and, most importantly, honest. From the moment I met her, everything just felt easy. No games, no doubts. Just two people who actually cared about each other. One evening, as Lena and I sat on my couch, she turned to me with a curious smile. You ever think about the past? I hesitated, sipping my beer. Sometimes, but not in the way I used to. She raised an eyebrow. And how did you used to think about it? I let out a breath, setting my drink down, like it was something I had to fix, like I needed answers, closure, something to make it all make sense. And now? I smiled. Now I just feel lucky that it's behind me. She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. I like that. And for the first time in a long time, I meant every word. Final thoughts. Looking back, I realized something. Rachel breaking my heart was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because sometimes the worst heartbreak leads you to the best possible future. I'd spent 7 years with someone who didn't truly value me, but that pain pushed me toward something better, toward someone better. And now, I wouldn't change a damn thing, because I'm finally exactly where I'm supposed to be.